In 1998, Iron Maiden blew the world wide apart with a metal album that everyone thought, wow.
That's an album.
Hello and welcome to Maiden Voyages, a podcast devoted to exploring the peerless discography of the world's greatest heavy metal band, maybe not this episode, Iron Maiden. So across this series, we've been journeying through the band's entire discography, discussing, analysing, dissecting, celebrating, and more commiserating than usual, it's fair to say, every single Iron Maiden record. So this episode, we find ourselves in 1998.
Dear God.
Who would believe it?
End
to
of an age.
Explore Iron Maiden's, not gonna lie, struggling for an adjective to describe Virtual 11. So I've gone for high-tech 11th album. Virtual 11.
Not sure that's fair.
Well, you know, virtual. That's all I've got.
It.
That's all I've got.
Yeah.
So let's introduce ourselves. I mean, you all know who we are by now, but that's the podcast way of doing things.
Yes.
So I'm Bledd, an historian of sorts, and I am an Iron Maiden sorcerer.
Sorcerer?
A conjurer.
Okay.
I've just blown two words I could have used now.
Yeah, exactly.
Damn it.
Got to save those for future episodes. I'm Sam. I'm a writer of sorts, and I am an Iron Maiden magician. Like a children's party magician, pulling like a rabbit out of a hat and variety of handkerchiefs out my sleeves.
That sounds fun. I would book an Iron Maiden magician.
Well, I mean, all you have to do is find the 1993 Bruce Farewell.
Yeah, the Racing Held concert. Yeah. And now I think of that wasn't actually that good.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not booking that guy.
I would definitely say, and I'm sure I said this in previous episodes, but particularly this episode, we're really stretching the use of the word peerless ahead of discography in that intro there.
Well, I mean, peerless in some respects.
There was nothing else quite like this.
Yes, in 1998, Iron Maiden blew the world wide apart with a metal album that everyone thought, wow.
That's an album.
That's an album.
It exists.
I mean, it doesn't quite sound like anything else that came out in 1998, as we'll discuss.
Yeah.
So, of course, we're talking about Virtual 11, Sam.
Yes.
When did you first hear Virtual 11?
I first heard it at I think the beginning of this year is around when I picked it up. And
you've never looked back.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I knew the song Future Real because that's been part of various compilations and seems to have lived on a bit. I knew the Klansman. Klansman?
Yeah.
Klansman. He's not like Superman.
Yeah.
The Klansman. And that's pretty much about it. And yeah, so it's a big album. I'll give it that.
Yeah.
It's very long. All these albums are gradually getting longer and longer. Or at least they feel that way.
Yeah, but it's not as long as the X Factor. It's actually, I think, considerably shorter than the X Factor.
Certainly feels longer than the X Factor.
Okay, interesting. Well, I've lived with this album, for a long old time. It was one of the latter ones I picked up. I remember hearing it before I heard the X Factor. At the time, I was very much I think I was about 14 when I first heard it. I was very much in the throes of my Maiden obsession, and I didn't mind it at the time. You were
naive.
I was
inexperienced.
I was hungry for Maiden.
Desperate.
This was giving me, like an addict. Sort of.
Yeah.
I was walking home from work the other day and I saw someone, I presume a homeless man, pick up a half-smoked cigarette off the floor and put it in their own mouth and light it and smoke it.
Okay.
And that's like me with Iron Maiden, Sam. Like, I'm looking for the half-smoked fag ends of Iron Maiden albums to consume.
I thought you were going to say you saw a homeless man in a Virtual 11 t-shirt. Okay.
I saw Blaze Bailey sleeping on the streets of Cardiff.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, that's the analogy I'm going for. I was desperate for that fix.
Okay.
And much like that man, I'm sure he was very happy to smoke about a quarter of a soggy cigarette that had been lying on the floor.
So this is the soggy cigarette
that hit the spot at the time, but maybe tinged with regret afterwards.
I think that describes this album pretty well, to be honest. We could probably end the episode there, really.
Yeah, just bye, everyone. Yeah, wouldn't bother. No, but there are things worth talking about this album, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we've decided to record a podcast about it, so...
We're here for another probably 2 hours talking about it. We need to keep the energy going.
The energy is already flattened.
Well,
just thinking about this album.
What better way to lift the energy, inject a bit of excitement into the room than a quiz?
God.
It's time for Be Quiz or Be Dead. So, and I've already pre-warned you, I'm pretty
happy. Off air, you pre-warned me that this was going to be a tricky one.
Well, no, I'm pleased with this quiz. I think it's a good all-round quiz. So, question 1.
Yeah.
The inset of Virtual 11, I've got an anecdote about this, by the way, we'll get to that. The inset of Virtual 11 features a photograph of the members of Iron Maiden with a number of famous 90s English footballers. Can you name 2 of them?
No.
Just any...
Alan Shearer.
No.
Probably too famous for that.
There are some big names. Neither of us, by the way, know anything about football.
No.
But there are people here I have heard of.
Okay. Michael Owen.
No, but that's a sensible guess.
Alan Shearer wasn't that unsensible. He was in the 90s.
Yeah, I guess he was in the 90s, yeah.
Paul Gascoigne.
Yes! Hey!
Ryan Giggs.
No.
Okay, I'm running out of 90s footballers.
Who would have thought it? Sam, who knows less about football than almost anyone else alive. Paul Gascoigne.
Hey, there are children being born right now who know less than me.
Yeah, that's true.
about it.
Yeah. Shall I tell you who the others were?
May as well.
You could have had Stuart Pearce.
Never heard of him.
Faustino Asprilla.
Never heard of him.
Ian Wright.
He was playing football then.
Yeah, well, no, I'm not sure if he was still playing football then, but he's featured in the photographs.
Okay.
Patrick Vieira and Mark Overmars.
I see. For anyone who isn't from the UK, Ian Wright nowadays is a very famous sports pundit and TV celebrity. And I can't think of like an American equivalent, but there's something very bizarre about picturing him with Iron Maiden, like nowadays.
There's something,
where they've both ended up.
We'll get onto this, but there's something so bizarre about the inset photo of that album, apropos of nothing, really, of here's Iron Maiden, the people who recorded the album, with some actually quite big names of English football.
It would be like Iron Maiden with Shaquille O'Neal. Right? Yeah. Like it's that level of, that's quite an odd clash of things.
Our one American listener's like, oh, now I get it. Thanks, Sam.
Happy to be of service. But yeah, there's also, I mean, this reminds me of an interview I read with Steve Harris recently that was specifically about Ed Hunter, which we'll come on to another time. But he was basically saying, like, we know that our fans are just like us and they like the same things as us, like football.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm sure plenty of your fans like football because they're British, but at the same time, I don't think you can bank on them being just like you.
A lot of them are just massive nerds who really don't like football, Steve.
I.e. us.
Yeah, exactly. I hate to break this to you, mate.
And because we're massive nerds, we have a whole podcast dedicated to you fools.
But my anecdote about that particular photo is my parents-in-law used to help out in a charity shop. And obviously they get a lot of vinyl through a charity shop. Yeah. And occasionally if there were things that interested me, they would, let me know. Not give it to me, by the way. I had to pay it.
No, of course.
I had to pay for it.
But put it aside for you.
Yes, yeah. And often the prices they were charging me were too much. And I said, no, I'm not paying that. Cancer research be damned, quite frankly. I'm not paying 25 quid for this. But anyway.
I mean, this album is not worth £25.
Well, my father-in-law was like, because he's a massive football fan, loves Arsenal in England, and he saw a Maiden record. I was like, oh, I know Bledd likes Iron Maiden. And he messaged my wife to go, can Bledd shed any light on this? I've just picked up this Iron Maiden LP, and I've opened it. It's a gatefold, and like Ian Wright and Stuart Pearce. That's the next Iron Maiden. What's this about? And I was like, I almost wish I could shed light on it, but no. But then I did ask, is that an original pressing of Virtual 11? Because they are.
Because I was about to say, like 98, that would be gold dust, right?
Nah, it was one of those reissues they did in 2015. Okay. So, no, I didn't get that off his hands.
So you've not added that to your LP collection?
No, sadly not.
That's fair.
But
with good reason. Yeah. If anything, it would sully the rest of the collection.
But if it was original, I mean, God, they'd have cured cancer by now if the money they'd have made off that.
Yeah, they'd put it straight on Discogs.
Yeah, it's like bam. But yeah, a very confusing state of affairs all round. Yeah. Anyway, question 2.
Okay.
The final track.
Wait, so do I get 1 point for that?
Yeah. I mean, I did originally say name 2, but I'm so impressed you managed to name 1. I'll give you a point. The final track of Virtual 11 is Como Estes Amigos.
Yeah. Estais.
Estais. Oh, I get the feeling you might get this then. What does this mean in English?
How are you, friends?
I'll give you that. How are you, my friend, was the translation I got.
It can't be my friend because it's amigos, so it's pluralized.
Well, there you go.
So it must be my friends, at least.
I didn't do Spanish at school, so I will give you the point for that, and
because
maybe
I'm correct.
Our one Spanish listener can indeed confirm.
Yeah, or to be honest, any European listeners, because they're usually much more well versed in languages than us,
or just anyone who picked
tiny island, isolated fools in the UK.
And the final question, slightly loaded question.
All right. So far, 2 for 2.
This is
unprecedented.
I mean, this one we're really upping the ante here. The Angel and the Gambler is one of the worst and most pointless songs in Iron Maiden's discography.
Is that objective fact?
Yeah, that's the start of the question.
That's in the Wikipedia article about the song.
But how many times does Blaze Bayley repeat the lyric, "Don't you think"?
Oh, man. So I actually counted this.
Let's see if you've got the same number.
So I counted it and then I lost interest. Because also, because the lyric changes, right?
So hence why I'm saying, how many times does he repeat the lyric, "Don't you think"?
Okay.
You better not be looking anything up, Sam.
No, I'm checking my notes to see if I did write it down for this one. Because there's another song that has a lot of repetition that I did write it down.
Oh, God, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
So I didn't write it down for this one, but I would say it's probably at least 12 times.
12 times?
Actually, no, throughout the entire song, rather than just that one sentence.
No, how many times in The Angel and the Gambler does Blaze Bayley repeat the lyric, "Don't you think"?
It's going to be a multiple of 4 because they weren't imaginative enough to break out of a 4 repeat pattern. 32.
66
Oh
times.
my God.
Blaze Bayley says the line, "Don't you think," 66 times.
That is no bueno.
Yeah. We'll get them good time, won't we? We'll get them good time.
Unlike Blaze, who will take too much time.
Yes, we'll take too much time, and and we'll all just hate ourselves in the process.
Yeah.
Did you say, is it a rare return of Pedden's Corner?
It is. I have.
Oh, exciting news.
Yeah, well, it's very small Pedant's Corner, and I can't remember what episodes any of these comments relate to. I've just been taking a bit of a running order. But a few episodes back now, we talked about Bruce Dickinson's solo album, Accident of Birth. And I thought it was a concept album, and you said it isn't, and then we agreed to disagree. I did a bit more digging, and it seems some of the songs are a loose concept.
Okay.
So it's like half concept album. So a loose concept united Toltec 7 Arrivals, Star Children, Omega, and Arc of Space. They're all about an apocalyptic future. And then Omega is about the end of the world, and Arc of Space is concerned with those who look at aliens almost as religion. And yeah, so Bruce, by his own admission in interviews, says those constitute a concept. The rest of it is just random nonsense.
Okay. So in other words, it's not a concept album, and I was right.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, good. Yeah, okay.
The other thing, one of the other things is we're talking about the Cart and Horses pub in East London, and where what it's like since it's very fancy pants refurb.
Yeah.
Very good pub, very nice refurb.
Lovely pub.
I incorrectly said the venue was upstairs. Turns out it's downstairs.
I'm so glad we've clarified that.
I know, very important, but I will not be wrong on the record.
I mean, it would be terrible if you got sued for defamation.
Exactly.
By the Colour Horses.
I really like that pub as well. I go there every time I work in London. It's great. And then the final thing is, during one of the X Factor episodes, we were wrong about the Iron Maiden logo. So we made a point about talking about it being the first time the Iron Maiden logo had the tails cut off. Yes, I'm glad
because I thought this,
And actually, it's the last time the logo still had the spiky tails.
Yeah.
And this album is the first time they're shorn off.
Yeah. And I think actually I misread my question because I think the question was meant to be something like, this is the last album to feature what? And it came out a bit wrong.
Yeah.
So
we were both wrong because we were both adamant at the time that the logo had changed when it hadn't.
I will happily put my hand up and apologise.
Good. That's what the people want, Bledd.
On the record, yeah. So I hope we can move on from...
I suppose. Begrudgingly, we can move
terrible
on.
shame. And talking about terrible shame, shall we get on to the recording of the not the X Factor, Virtual 11?
Yes.
So, the X Factor, quite a lukewarm reception.
Yeah.
Of course, we'll pick up the story as usual from when the X Factor's released. So, let's see how the X Factor went.
Great tour name.
Very good tour name. Yeah, very strong tour name, the X Factor. And of course, it's the first time they've played shows with Blaze.
And how did they go?
Well, from the outset, it seems that things weren't looking good. So Blaze complained that he wasn't given enough time to prepare for the tour.
Right.
So Maiden promised him, they said, look, we'll...
After like 2 years of recording this album, or a year and a half, it seems ridiculous that they would rush into a tour.
Yeah, but it's a weird one because they seem to send Blaze Bayley and Dave Murray on this really grueling promotional campaign.
Yeah.
Just after the album came out, where they go all over the world chatting about it. But they promised Blaze, they said, look, we'll have 4 weeks in rehearsals, so we'll be fighting fit, ready to go.
Yeah.
But then Blaze said, for whatever reason, the 4 weeks ended up being 7 days rehearsal time.
Wow, that is not much time to break in a new singer on their debut tour with the band and let's be fair about this, in a situation where everyone is kind of gunning to shit on that singer.
Yeah.
Because Bruce was so well loved and so respected as a voice of heavy metal. Like, Blaze had the cards stacked against him from the start.
And also, Blaze has never toured outside the UK.
What?
Yeah, Wolfsbane never toured outside of Britain.
But they were signed to an American label.
Yeah, they never went to the States.
I am shocked by that.
Yeah, so this is a guy who has a lot of experience playing the clubs and pubs of the UK.
Yeah.
But nothing on the kind of scale of what he's about to embark on. And so this is what...
Like a lamb to the slaughter.
Well, yeah, so this is what Bailey said at the time. So he said... So rehearsal time got squeezed, and from that time on, I felt that live, I was always on the back foot, always trying to catch up.
Yeah.
And we went into a really busy schedule with no chance to get ahead. That was the start of a series of things where I felt I was constantly playing with one arm tied behind my back.
Yeah, yeah.
But things get worse for poor Blaze.
Oh, God.
Because on top of that, he claimed that initially, at least, he wasn't allowed to have any input into his monitor mix live.
What?
So he didn't originally have in-ear monitors. So
yeah. So presumably he had like monitor speakers.
Yeah, wedge monitors, so the big things you see at the front of the stage, right? So this is what he said. I said to the monitor man when they started playing live that I would like some guitar in my wedges.
Yeah.
But he said no. I was told you can't have any guitar in your wedges, but fucking hell, they're my wedges. Because that's right in front of me, and the guitar's what I pitched to. But they said no. All I had was bass and vocals, and that's it.
That's insane.
Yeah.
And goes a long way to explain, if you see live clips of Blaze from that era, he is out of key quite often.
Yeah. So, not unsurprisingly, we'll talk about monitor mixes, a slight detour. But I had this great interview with one of the Duplantier brothers from Gojira.
Oh, yeah.
When they were opening for Metallica, they were at the sound desk, and Metallica sound guy was like, do you want to hear what James Hetfield hears in his in-ear monitor?
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, yeah, amazing. So they stuck these headphones on. There's like, this is what James gets. And they said, this is literally just James. Like, all James can hear on stage is himself. There's no drums. And the sound goes like, yeah, because Lars follows James, not vice versa.
Wow.
Like, apparently James is in a monitor, like all he has is...
Presumably they're playing to a click, though.
But
I would assume at this point...
Metallica don't sound... Like, they should be a tighter band live if they play to a click. To be honest,
yeah, okay.
They don't sound like they play to a click. To be fair to them, I just love the idea of James Hetfield being like, "What do you want in your monitors, James?
Just me,
my guitar, my vocal, anything else? No,
just me.
Yeah, I just want to hear myself." But yeah, that's not what Blaze wanted. He wanted a bit of guitar.
Yeah,
as wanted, didn't get it. So he said, "I just struggled the whole tour to be in tune in time.
Yeah.
I didn't move much on the tour because I was trying to listen to find out where I was."
Oh man.
Yeah, sounds pretty grim, doesn't it?
And we touched on this a little bit before in the X Factor episodes, but then you add on top of that the fact that a lot of the songs aren't really in his natural range.
Yeah.
So it would have been hard enough to pitch them if he'd had like everything in his corner to begin with. You add that on top and it's just ridiculous. And like the band, obviously, I assume it's a Steve decision. It refuses to tune down in any way to accommodate his range. So yeah, that all sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Well, but also, who's turning around to the lead singer and going, no, you can't have that?
Yeah.
Like, presumably that must have been someone in the band.
I mean, the crew are technically all employees of the band.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
So if a member of the band is saying, this is what I'd like my monitors, there must have been some higher guidance from above or decision, which is like, oh, this is what you get in these monitors.
I think we can assume what that higher...
Yeah, I think we can assume who that was.
Might be.
Yeah, I wonder... Steve Harris. I wonder who just wanted bass and vocals. Who could that be?
All the monitors, bass only.
Yeah. Well, when we get to the production of Virtual 11...
all the channels, bass only.
Yeah. Are you sure the bass is loud enough? Because I think it could be a little bit louder.
Yeah.
But anyway, despite that, far from the best of starts, they hit the road in September 1995. Their first gig is in Jerusalem.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Is it the first time Maiden have played Jerusalem?
It is the first time they've played Israel, I believe, yeah. And to be fair, it's a proper comprehensive world tour. So they start in September 1995, goes through until September 1996.
What kind of size venues are they playing at this point? Because presumably it's the mid-90s.
Yeah.
And Bruce is gone. There's going to be some downgrading, right?
Yeah, well, we'll get there. It varies considerably.
Okay.
It varies considerably.
Except for South America, where it will just be they're playing entire cities.
I mean, that's pretty much it, right? Yeah. So
maybe parts of Japan.
But interestingly, apparently the decision to start the tour in Jerusalem was Rod Smallwood's call.
Okay.
Because he wanted to break Blaze in, basically away from the eyes of the media a bit.
Okay.
So the first few dates are in these... it feels a bit condescending saying out of the way places because it's not out of the way if you live in the Middle East.
Yeah, but out of the way of the gaze of the British and American press.
Yeah, sort of the Western rock press, right?
Yeah.
Who are probably
and
not
the German press,
going
who
over
I assume
there.
care a lot about Maiden.
Yeah. Do you want to know who were some of the support acts for Maiden on the X Factor?
Yeah, are they fans of the time?
Yeah, but it's random as hell.
Okay. It's going to be like... What are we talking? 1995?
Yeah, through to
96. I haven't got a clue.
Okay. In Europe, they toured quite extensively with My Dying Bride.
What?
Yeah. Apparently, a personal request of Steve Harris.
I mean, that's one of the better support band choices.
I mean, I bloody love My Dying Bride.
I'm not huge with them, but I would definitely watch them support Iron Maiden.
Yeah.
That's a cool setup.
And also, this was like in the mid-90s, so they were still signed to Peaceville Records.
Yeah.
They were probably one of the most underground bands that Maiden had open for them. So they play a lot of shows to My Dying Bride, Fear Factory.
Okay, that makes sense at the time.
Yeah. And to be honest, in the mid-90s, I'm kind of surprised. Fear Factory were... People tend to forget how massive Fear Factory were in the 90s.
Yeah.
I'm quite surprised that opening for Maiden was worth their time.
But were they big... globally? Obviously they were big in America.
Yeah, maybe less
But
so in Europe, and they do open
kind
for
of
Maiden in
suspect Europe and the UK, industrial never took off in the same way here.
Yeah.
Whereas you did have stuff like you had British death metal and sort of goth stuff happening in the mid-90s. It was either gore or goth, basically.
Yeah. That's what we like, folks.
You're Anathema or Paradise Lost and nothing in between.
Also, interestingly, they had Psycho Motel, Adrian Smith's mid-90s project opening.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Sadly, no on-stage collaboration.
That feels like a shame.
Yeah, get him on.
Yeah.
But they didn't.
I have a good Adrian Smith anecdote.
Yeah.
Ish.
We love an Adrian Smith anecdote.
So I was, off the back of the last episode, I was just looking into singers who were rumoured to have auditioned for Iron Maiden, and obviously Michael Kiske came up at some point. And as we, I think, kind of established in the last episode, Michael Kiske didn't audition for Iron Maiden, but I did find a really good interview quote from him from around shortly after he put together his solo album in 96. And it's, I actually listened to The X Factor with Adrian Smith in my apartment when we were both fooling around with my first solo record. We couldn't understand what we were hearing. The whole spirit of the album was very weird.
Very weird, yeah.
So I thought it was just a very diplomatic way to say, what the hell is this?
Yeah. No, fair play to Michael Kiske. That could have been worse. Yeah. This is different. And finally, they had an opening band called Dirty Deeds. Now, the only reason Dirty Deeds get an inclusion here is they were one of two bands signed to a record label that Steve Harris started around this time.
Didn't realise Steve had a record
Neither did I. Steve Harris, in conjunction with Rod Smallwood, had a record label called Beast Records.
Beast,
yeah.
Okay.
Beast Records, who signed two acts. Dirty Deeds.
Is the other one British Lion?
No.
Okay.
There was another band called Kick.
Kick?
Yeah, Kick.
Okay. So you have AC/DC fans and a drum pedal fan.
I actually listened to Kick, and their debut album, the name of which I forget, is on Spotify.
Yeah.
It's very melodic, AOR-y hard rock.
Okay.
It's quite good, but it was slightly Brit rock vibe.
That sounds
sort
quite
of Terrorvision meets, I don't know, Def Leppard. I mean, not quite as good as that sounds, but...
Yeah, because that sounds excellent.
Yeah, no, it's not as good as that sounds. But it's not actually bad. But, of course, the fact that I don't think many people have ever heard of either of those bands.
Yeah.
It was quite a short-lived venture. But in South America, they sort of tour with like this Monsters Rock package with Motorhead and Skid Row.
That's a cool package. Is Seb Buck still in Skid Row at this point? 95,
96. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, it would be just around Subhuman Race, right?
Well, it's interesting though, right? Because it is a cool package, but it's also very much a kind of, hey guys, remember the 80s? Yeah, it's kind of very much the nostalgia.
It's really interesting to think of these bands in the 90s being treated as like dinosaurs.
More so than they were in the early 2000s.
More so than they're treated as dinosaurs now.
Yeah, it's weird, yeah.
Which kind of, time is a circle, you know?
Yeah, they definitely were.
It's really bizarre.
And the fact that Maiden were doing packages like that, and it's also interesting that they've strenuously avoided it since 2000. They never tour with Saxon or Priest or kind of anyone like that. They always will pick a young support act because I think they're very... tetchy about the association of nostalgia now.
Yeah. I was reading yesterday an article on the AV Club that was from like 1999, and it was about the worst albums that had come out in the decade. And the way it talked about any band that had existed pre-1990 was really stark, because the whole tone was just like, this is dinosaur music for old people, and like the people in these bands are probably about 37 at the time. It's like, oh god. Okay,
sad but true. So we heard that Blaze wasn't very happy with the tour. Should we hear what Steve thought?
Yes.
So Steve says, we tailored the live set to what Blaze was capable of doing, which if you hear some of the recordings of the X Factor is beggars belief slightly. I think it's fair to say, some of the choices.
Yeah.
But Steve interestingly said they deliberately avoided some songs that they thought had too strong an association with Bruce. That's
interesting.
So they dropped Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter.
Well, I mean, that's literally a Bruce song.
They dropped Run to the Hills.
I can understand why they drop it, but when it's one of your most famous songs, it feels like a odd call.
I think Blaze would struggle with that. Vocally.
I think he could do it, but it would just be a whole octave down.
Yeah, but he doesn't do that. That's the problem.
Yeah.
He always tries to match.
Oh, yeah.
Bruce.
He can't do it up where Bruce is singing
but I always think that's the problem with a lot of... But anyway, we'll get there when we get to it. They also play a lot of X Factor songs on the tour.
Makes sense.
So you get Man on the Edge, great. Lord of the Flies, good. Fortunes of War. Blood on the World's Hands. It goes on. The Edge of Darkness. The Aftermath. Okay, yeah. But yeah, so...
Yeah, I mean, so I watched a lot of... If you look on YouTube, you can find a gig from Chile during this tour.
I know the one, yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of an infamous one because Blaze and Steve kind of lose their rag towards the end of it during the Trooper.
Yeah.
Because of some... I think fans are spitting at them.
Yeah.
And so you get this amazing clip where just...
Kill him!
Yeah. Well, but even before that, just Blaze and Steve just going through the song.
Yeah.
But stood dead in the center, staring someone down.
Yeah.
And just looking so hacked off. And then, yeah, as soon as the song's done, they're effing and jeffing everywhere, telling a lot of people to murder someone. It's a bit awkward. But yeah, you can watch that whole Pro Shot gig on YouTube, and it's... I by the sounds of it, it sounds quite representative of that tour.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of fire and passion from Blaze, but it doesn't work for the songs because the ranges are just wrong.
Well, yeah, and it's no surprise that this took a massive toll on his voice, right? So they tour the USA and they end up cancelling several shows because of Blaze's vocal issues.
Well, also, he had 7 days to rehearse for this tour. Of course, he's not going to be like up to par to singing this stuff properly either, like in terms of like technique and vocal stamina.
Well, you know, Yannick's take on it was this, like talking about the fact that to cancel some shows with Blaze. He said, it's true that he had some problems sometimes on stage, but that's partly our fault, as we were asking him to sing in a higher register than what is natural for him.
Yeah.
Blaze has a very distinctive voice, and we perhaps needed him to stretch it into unnatural territory.
I do think it was really criminal. They just didn't tune things down a step.
Yeah. I mean...
Plus, also, it's the mid-90s. It would have made everything heavy.
Yeah. I mean, Priest did it, despite the fact they had Tim Owens, who's got an amazing vocal range.
Yeah.
They tuned down a whole step.
The songs wouldn't have sounded particularly different, but...
It would have sounded a bit different, but yeah.
Sure, but like a step is not going to make a huge difference, but it will make a huge difference to the singer.
Yeah. But of course they didn't do that. And also, I don't understand why Blaze... well, you know, maybe this is what he was told or what he felt he had to do, but he could have pitched an octave lower or just gone down a bit. And so often, the evil that men do, when you watch the live recordings of Blaze doing that, and you get to... The evil that men do! It's so unnatural for him.
Yeah.
Whereas you could just take it lower, just go, you know, just take it.
But I mean, it's probably also made harder by only being able to hear his vocals and the bass.
Oh yeah, that doesn't make it any easier. You mentioned before about the size of the venues they're playing.
Yeah.
So in almost all territories, bar South America, but they have got this quite stacked package, to be fair, of Motown.
Yeah.
They are playing smaller venues, naturally. Do you want to know how Steve Harris justifies this?
It is going back to their roots and it's a more intimate show for the fans.
Funny enough, good suggestion, but not quite. So Steve says...
That's how I'd sell it as a marketer of 15 years.
Steve says this was actually something they did in Blaze's interest. because they wanted to make sure Blaze was playing in front of sold-out venues. So let me say, so this is what Steve says. We were careful on the tour. Depending on the territory, we kept the size of the halls between 2,500 and 9,000. In the States, we were even more cautious due to the state of the market.
Yeah.
So we kept to small theatres and large clubs of around 1,500 to 2,000. And this was Steve saying, we didn't want to put Blaze out there in front of a half-empty arena. We'd rather sell out smaller venues so he gets that sense of atmosphere and that engagement.
Which I think is sound logic, but I'm also not convinced it was just for Blaze's benefit.
No,
I think it was probably for all their morale.
Yeah.
Right?
And also, I think
we didn't want to play to half-empty venues.
Yeah, exactly. And also, that's a massive...
And lose money.
That's a massive loss maker, exactly, right? So it's kind of one thing to sort of portray it as this act of generosity and going, well, we could have just played...
But also, the demand wasn't there.
We could have booked Wembley Arena and played in front of a pitiful audience of like a few people down the front. But, we thought that's not...
But, Blaze is a delicate flower. We didn't want to set it.
Yeah. Of course, we love that. We love playing to
we love empty venues.
One interesting thing I found is I actually found the Kerrang review of Iron Maiden's show at Nottingham Rock City, the kind of venue, you'd be more accustomed to see.
What kind of size is Rock City? Like
it's less than 1,000.
Less than 1,000?
Or it's about 1,000, I think. I mean, it's
do a live fact check.
It's
it can't be less than 1,000.
It's about 1,000, I'd say. It's the kind of venue the Wild Hearts play.
Okay, that is a damning indictment.
Well, we both love the Wild Hearts.
Absolutely love the Wild Hearts. They do not play big venues.
But, it's the sort of venue bands of that size.
2,000. It's a 2,000.
2,000. Okay, respectable then, I guess.
Still dinky for Maiden.
Oh, well, by the standards of what we're used to now, yeah.
Yeah.
But the Kerrang reviews are really insightful, I think, because firstly, they give it a 4K.
Oh, wow.
And they're full of praise for Blaze.
Good.
They're like, he's so enthusiastic.
Praise for Blaze.
Praise for Blaze. They're like, and they sort of suggest the fans love him. They say he's a really hard-working frontman, really endears themselves to the fans. But this is a direct quote from the review. I think it's 1996 because it's the second leg of the tour. But the reviewer notes that then Blaze says, here's one from the new album. Cue boos, mumblings and V signs. In the live environment, Maiden fans have taken to Blaze like the prodigal son. The X Factor album seems to remain resolutely unloved.
That's really interesting.
So they're basically saying the problem's not Blaze.
Yeah.
It's the X Factor material.
And that's fair. Again, if you watch that Chile gig, you can kind of see all the energy sucked out of the room every time they do an X Factor song.
Oh my God. Yeah. Can you imagine if they're like,
here's 8 minutes of the same riff.
Here's the aftermath. Oh, God.
Fortunes of War.
Oh, yeah. And I thought that was a really interesting contemporary review because I think it kind of hits the nail on the head, right? Like Maiden are really, as they often do, are properly going out and selling this new material.
Particularly because a lot of the narrative that existed when we were younger and getting into Maiden in the early noughties was that Blaze was universally hated from the off.
Yeah.
Which
I don't think that's necessarily
I don't think that's necessarily true, yeah.
Like I think Maiden fans... A lot of people were, and it's also fair to say, a lot of Maiden fans had already checked out by the time he joined anyway, and it's kind of part of the time. Before we will get to obviously the recording of Virtual Eleven, a few little things going on in the background here as well.
Yeah,
we have the continued war of words with Bruce Dickinson.
In
the press, which I think is sometimes over exaggerated.
Yeah, I didn't realise there was much of a war.
Well, yeah, a lot is made of it. And it goes both ways. So Steve Harris famously said around this time about Bruce Dickinson that he'd make a country album if he thought it would sell. Which is
quite a brutal put down.
Stinger, Steve.
I would also listen to a Bruce Dickinson country album.
I mean, I'd listen to it. It's not what I want.
No, but I think it would be quite interesting. But anyway.
Might be. But yeah, there seemed to be a lot of animosity in the camp, in the Maiden camp, because they seemed to think Bruce was undermining them, slagging them off.
Yeah.
Having watched an awful lot of video interviews of Bruce around this time, he actually seems, a lot of the time, he's very diplomatic.
Yeah.
And he just says, look, I'm I don't speak to Steve much, but I'm still friends with lots of the guys, yada, yada. But occasionally stuff slips, right?
Yeah.
So this quote from Bruce in 1996, he says, "The new Maiden record in North America has sold 60, 70,000 copies. In the same period of time, the reissued Iron Maiden back catalogue has sold 400,000 copies, which means that somewhere there's a bunch of people buying all these old Maiden records. The X Factor made it so easy for people to understand why I left. It's completely clear. It's a bit of a shame to see Maiden go down the tubes."
Wow. Okay, yeah, that is pretty. I mean, to be fair, he's backed it up with stats and facts, which
He's probably
is better than most mudslinging you get in press.
It's like question time, isn't it? He's done his homework.
Yeah.
He's gone in prepped, being like, "Hey, look, the back catalogue has sold 400,000 copies. Your new album's not sold many more at all."
And look, I also have sympathy for both camps in that, particularly around this period, and I think this is less of a thing nowadays, but at this point, you're doing so many press junkets for every release that at a certain point, you're bored answering the same thing to the same question.
And of course, Bruce is being asked about Maiden constantly.
Yeah,
right?
and you're getting asked about Maiden or you're getting asked about Bruce all the time. So things will slip, or you might just not even snap, but just kind of say more than the carefully measured thing because you're bored and frustrated.
Yeah.
Like, you're not in this business to just talk about yourself constantly. You're there to hopefully make art.
Yeah. And while we're in the world of press stuff, another quite revealing press article from this time is where Kerrang have this great idea. It's either 95 or 96.
Yeah.
They go, "We're going to get Lars Ulrich to interview Steve Harris."
Oh, yeah.
And there's a transcript of this online, and it's all documented by the reporter.
Right.
Firstly, the opening intros is an interesting bit of prose, I think. "In popular opinion," the reporter writes, "the intervening years," talking about since the 80s, "have seen the unofficial greatest metal band in the world accolade pass from Harris's crew to Ulrich's stadium straddling quartet."
Interesting.
I mean, that's just undeniable, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
in the mid-90s.
Post-Black Album, yeah, of course.
But the start of the interview is quite good. So the reporter sort of describes the scene. So Lars and Steve sit down. "There are a few moments of silence. 'Okay,' Lars laughs. 'You're the interviewer. I'm the subject. Go ahead.' Steve looks confused. 'I thought you were interviewing me,' he frowns. So Lars Ulrich basically arrives, presuming Steve Harris is going to interview him.
Oh, my God.
And the reporter has to break to him, "No, actually, you're interviewing Steve Harris."
Oh, God. Oh, that is so awkward.
It gets more awkward. There's a moment in the interview where Steve is probing Lars about what he thinks about the most recent Iron Maiden album.
Oh, God.
But it's not even that Lars says he doesn't like it. Lars has to kind of quite tacitly admit that he's not even listened to it.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to read that. That sounds like the metal equivalent of the show Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah. If you just Google Lars, Steve Harris, Kerrang interview, there's someone that's kindly transcribed the whole thing.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus.
So that's the X Factor.
Okay.
Anyway, I was going to say a mixed success, but maybe just mixed.
I think just mixed. It doesn't sound like much of a success at all. I mean, you've got smaller venues, you've got criticism of the album. The material is received quite badly live by the sounds of it. And then Blaze is having performance problems because nothing has been done to accommodate his vocal style. As
Yannick latterly admitted, to be fair.
Yeah.
So the only other thing we might want to touch upon before we get to the recording Virtual 11 is that Maiden put out their first official compilation.
They do.
1996.
Best of the Beast.
Best of the Beast.
Which, importantly, has a new song on it.
Yes, it does.
Virus.
And you've listened to it, I presume?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
also released as a single. It charts at number 16.
And it has very good artwork on the single. I really like the artwork. It's Eddie's face, but sort of with cyber wires coming out of it. And I mean, it's incredibly 90s. It's
Weirdly,
sort of like a
I have
Eddie,
Virus
cool.
on 12-inch vinyl and a CD single version.
Why?
I don't know. I just do.
Why would you do that?
I'll tell you why, Sam, because I saw them in the wild and paid good money for them for some reason.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I'll try and dig them out for the Twitter. But yeah, I do have those things.
Yeah, the artwork is the best thing about that single.
You don't like...
And I think it's a Riggsy thing.
Yeah, it is a Riggsy thing, isn't it? You don't like the all in your mind.
It's just a very nothing song.
Yeah.
And it's surprising it was released as a single.
It should be nowhere near an Iron Maiden best of.
Yeah. And I guess if you're putting out this best of, this career spelling best of, and you're adding a new song to it to kind of endear people to your new singer and your newer material, that is not putting the best foot forward.
No. But what was the other exclusive track that was on Best of the Beast, Sam? Could have put because it'd be dead.
It's going to be a live rendition of something, right?
Not quite. It was the version of Strange World that was recorded as part of the sessions that went on to be the Soundhouse tapes, but wasn't on the Soundhouse tapes. Yeah. So that appeared on some copies. And some copies, I believe there was a 3-disc version that came with the entirety of the Soundhouse tapes.
Am I also right in thinking that the Virus B-sides are taken from the Soundhouse tapes?
Maybe. In other words, I don't know.
Okay, well, we can do a fact
deep
check
into
on
the
that,
Virus
I
single.
I think they might be.
Despite the fact we've already ascertained I have 2 different versions of it.
Do you know, flipping this back at you, do you know what else Best of the Beast advertised?
Was it Melt?
It was Melt.
AKA
Iron... Well, they're 2 distinct things.
Oh,
we'll come on to it in the Ed Hunter episode. But yeah, this is when we first start getting rumblings that Iron Maiden are lending Eddie's likeness to a video game and making an official Iron Maiden video game. I believe on the Best of the Beast cover, it's touted as like 3D computer game.
What?
Which, it's 96. That was already standard by that point. But we'll come on to how misguided the entire video game experience
Spoiler for the listeners, but you are getting an Ed Hunter /Melt /Iron Maiden video game special at some point in the future.
Yes.
But it also seems like a slightly odd time to put out a compilation album that features material that primarily consists of your
feature plays.
Yeah.
Or the X Factor.
It's a weird choice, isn't it?
It seems a little desperate.
Yeah, it's hardly the big reset of, no, this is the new era of the band.
Yeah.
And then they're shining a spotlight on.
Remember our former glories.
Like, yeah.
Please remember our former glories.
We used to be really good. Just look at all these songs. It's the modern comparison that springs to mind is Kerry King launching his solo career, and then almost immediately announcing there's going to be some Slayer reunion gigs.
Yeah.
That everyone's going, okay, that's a curious decision.
Yeah.
And you almost wonder, I don't know, pure speculation, but were EMI kind of pushing for something that might shift a few copies after the sales of the X Factor didn't quite live up to expectation, maybe?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it was born out of commercial necessity, right? Like, if you're not... If the X Factor is kind of being panned critically and people aren't buying it, at least you can guarantee that a best of compilation will sell, particularly on CD as well, being the not even that new format anymore, but shinier and newer.
A little fun personal fact as well. The first ever Iron Maiden t-shirt I owned, that sadly I no longer have, was a Best of the Beast shirt.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
again, another Riggs artwork, I believe.
Yes, yeah.
Where he redrew lots of past Eddies.
Yeah, it's quite fun.
Yeah,
quite fun. So
maybe even the last Riggs artwork, that or Virus.
Well, he's
in terms of like main.
Oh, in terms
releases.
of like in terms of like
in terms
full
of covers.
length. Yeah, good point. So anyway, so they've wrapped up the X Factor. They've had Best of the Beast.
Every time you say X Factor, it just sounds like you're really enunciating factor.
well, because the X Factor.
Yeah.
Well, like I've suddenly become like a really sort of like jowly conservative.
Or an actor.
Yeah, the X Factor, yeah. All of a sudden, Boris Johnson is the X Factor.
That's a strong Boris Johnson voice.
Thank you, yeah, I try. I am available for bookings. I will...
The thing about Iron Maiden.
The thing about Iron Maiden is... anyway...
Great British band.
He would love Iron Maiden, wouldn't he, Boris Johnson, if he knew who they were?
Yeah, but for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah. Lots of Union Jack flag waving.
Bruce Dickinson voted for Brexit.
Yeah.
Oh, God. All right, let's move on.
So, they wrap up the tour. They've had Best of the Beast. They take a bit of time off at the start of 1997.
Yeah.
And then, where do they go back to, Sam?
Compass Point? Oh, no. They've given up on Compass Point, right? Yeah, they go back to Steve's barn.
They go back to Steve's barn.
It's always the barn.
To start working on Virtual 11.
Yeah.
Now, the genesis of the album seems very positive. Everyone talks about it. There's a very happy, jovial vibe.
Okay.
Everyone's in a very good mood.
Okay.
The same production team as did the X Factor.
Okay.
So it's Steve Harris and poor Nigel Green.
Yeah.
I feel very sorry for Nigel Green. I know nothing about him, but I can't help but feel, as like a professional sound engineer,
on his career.
Yeah, he's not. Yeah, but so it's the same X Factor team, behind the recording desk. Key takeaways about the recording bit: it seems to be much quicker. So we spoke about the X Factor seems to go on and on for no obvious reason. Apparently, Virtual 11's recorded in only 3 weeks.
Are they coming to it with material pre-written?
Seemingly, yeah. Okay. It seems to pretty much it's very hard to find much. I mean, because Steve wrote pretty much almost the entire album, right? Virtually. So Steve clearly has this material. Virtually. Yeah. And they record it all in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Apparently, the tour had already been booked for Virtual 11. So it's a bit like the old way of working. They're working deadlines again. So they haven't got this luxury of...
Just Rod with a 5-way whip.
Yeah, like you've got 3 weeks, the tour's booked, get the album down, we're recording it. Again, we spoke on the X Factor how the recording of that album did nothing for Blaze's vocals.
Yeah. Yeah.
This time... A lot of the vocals you hear on Virtual 11 apparently are taken from Blaze's rough vocals from the rehearsals.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So this is basically they're just, they're playing through the album as a band.
Yeah.
Just to get a sort of sense of the sound in the studio. And they like Blaze's take so much in what is basically his practice run through.
Now, to be fair, I will say that there are instances when and look, I'm less so from my perspective, but having read it from other bands, there are instances when you record something, it's not intended to be a final cut. And actually there's a vibe and an energy to that recording that you go so far as actually, we're going to finalize this recording rather than re-record it.
Well,
so for instance, like the first Wild Hearts
I was about to say, they've come up already. Yeah, this is the Wild Hearts. Yeah.
All demo recordings. And then they decided, actually, that's the vibe. And then just properly mixed it and mastered it. And you get an incredible debut album. Or I think it is Wholehearted by Extreme was recorded in a basement on some tape recorders. Mm-hmm. And then they couldn't recapture that vibe in the studio, so just stuck with it. So there are instances for that. Which is to say, this is not one of those instances. Because there is not a vibe here.
No, there is... Yeah, again, and it just feels like... And again, it's just Blaze's vocal. Like, nobody else was subjected to that. Everyone else got to put down their parts properly, but Blaze is the one who they go, well, actually, mate, yeah, that sounds good enough. Let's go with that.
It really explains some of my notes about the album itself, which we'll come on to later. Yeah. But, some of the vocal takes are rough.
Yeah. Well, according to Steve, it was more raw and upbeat.
It was raw.
Yeah.
I'll give him that.
So in general,
a fault.
They didn't do many overdubs.
Although there are slightly more overdubs than on the X Factor. I noticed some actual harmonies and backing vocals.
Yeah. I mean, in places, yeah.
Some, not many, some.
And again, a bit like the X Factor, but even more so is that Steve Harris, when it comes to songwriting, Steve Harris totally dominates. So he's credited on every single track except one of the 8 tracks we get.
It's Como estáis, amigos, right?
Como estáis, amigos, yeah.
We're both going to keep butchering the pronunciation of that each time.
Until by the end, it's just like, Chomo estos chorizo. Yeah, that's the song, right?
I'm very sorry to anyone Spanish.
I'm sorry, no, we love Spain.
We were just both bad at other languages.
Yeah. I mean, in my defense, I was quite good at German.
Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah. Now, that's pretty much all I've got to say about the recording of it. But an interesting tidbit is that it's long been claimed.
Wait, one question.
Oh, go on.
One question I have is: was Virus recorded in these sessions or separately?
I believe separately.
Okay.
I don't. Yeah, because I think the Virtual 11 recording takes place after Best of the Beast has come out.
Okay.
So yeah, so they are separate sessions.
Okay.
Although there is a thread that, Virus wouldn't sound out of place on Virtual 11 for better or worse.
I think it's very much a precursor of things to come.
Yeah. But the other little tidbit about the writing and recording of this album is that we'll get to the B-sides in a second, but there's all the B-sides for the singles are live tracks, right?
Yeah.
So the sense is that there's no leftover material, although it has since been claimed that some of the leftover material from these sessions ended up in Brave New World.
Interesting.
Particularly Dream of Mirrors. Nomad is another one that's said to originate from Virtual 11 sessions.
And I think this is something that we've both raised before. From the X Factor onwards, people made this huge distinction between the Blaze years and then Brave New World being like different periods of Maiden. But actually, the songwriting style, like we've said before, begins on the X Factor.
Yeah.
And that songwriting style is phase 2 or phase 3 of Maiden that's lasting till today.
Yeah.
So it doesn't surprise me to learn that some of Brave New World is offcuts of this album.
Yeah.
I think, and we'll touch on this when we get to Brave New World, I can hear that lineage a lot, but a lot of it is elevated through production and stronger vocal performances.
Yeah. And also, just like Adrian's and Bruce's songwriting credits sort of
fix a lot of things.
Yeah, they do. But there's also speculation, and totally speculation, not mine, that you'll notice that Blaze Bayley has no songwriting credits on Brave New World. Although some of these songs were written during his time in the band.
Do you reckon he was paid off?
That is the suggestion.
So as
not my suggestion before anyone comes at me.
No, but from a PR perspective, I can totally get... Because it's easy for Maiden to scapegoat him when Bruce comes back. And whilst I don't think anyone in Maiden seems to have ever badmouthed Blaze, he is the easy scapegoat, even if you're just doing it implicitly, scrubbing his name from things.
Yeah, so that's the suggestion anyway.
That's interesting.
So the conceptual side of the album, so Virtual 11. What's going on, Steve? What's the inspiration? Well, 2 things that have nothing in common. We've got
the internet and football.
We've got a video game coming out, and I like football. So 1998 is the Football World Cup year. So Steve's going, let's get the football involved.
It's in the context of that Steve Harris makes that thing about that comment about, we reckon our fans are just like us. They love football too. So let's get the World Cup involved. It's like, it has nothing to do with this album.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's so self-indulgent.
But it's also just so
self-indulgent,
incongruous.
Yeah.
Like, if you're calling an album Virtual 11, you've got a VR headset on the cover, and then just like some awkward references to the World Cup and a football match, and it's like, pick a lane, man.
Yeah, it's like none of this makes sense together. And of course, part of it is like this promo for the upcoming video game. And like I said, there will be a separate episode on this. But I thought this quote from Steve was too good to miss here. He's talking about the game at the time. As for the game itself, it's the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
I was going to use this in the next episode.
Sorry.
Read the quote, because it is gold.
I don't get shocked very often. Which is the most partridge thing I've ever heard. But Ed Hunter was so good.
Yeah.
That's what Steve had to say.
Yeah. And then he starts bagging on about like, you could go into the Ruskin Arms. It's mind-blowing.
Yeah, more about that on the end episode.
I have so many opinions about the way they talk about the two games as they exist at any point.
But and then when they came to promote this album, they decided that rather than send Blaze and Dave Murray around the world again, they'd play a string of celebrity football matches against various football teams.
Okay, so when you say celebrity football matches, is it just Iron Maiden versus Arsenal?
Well, no, it's just like, that'd be... it's like Iron Maiden against like a Premier League. This is like a confusing thing. I'm not quite sure. They say pro celebrity teams. Often it seems to be teams largely comprised of music journalists.
That's not a celebrity team.
That's what...
I mean, Malcolm Dome may be a celeb to us, but he's not a celeb to most people.
And then Iron Maiden always win, obviously, because, they've got Steve Harris, who's actually quite good at football. But Blaze said that apparently 5,000 kids turned up in Spain just to watch the band play football.
Is that more people than attended the gig?
Quite possibly, yeah. They were actually, it's just... We were just football fans. We didn't actually know these people. We were just turned up to watch anything. So, that was the promo tour. They played a bunch of football matches.
Okay. Well, as far as, press angles go, that's quite fun. But the football stuff is just really weird.
Yeah. And
even the video game stuff makes more sense to me. You've got this virtual iconography. You've called your album Virtual 11. Sure, tie it into a video game, except you're going to tie a best of compilation into the video game instead.
Yeah.
It's all a mess.
It's all a mess.
What is Rod Smallwood doing at this point?
Well, he's been very quiet, isn't he? We haven't heard a lot from the old Rod Smallwood.
And also, I meant to ask earlier, Rod's still managing Bruce at this point as well.
He is indeed, yeah.
So when there's discontent in the two camps between each other, presumably Rod's just head in hands sobbing.
Yeah, but at the same time, this is what I've heard Bruce say in plenty of interviews. Look, we share the same offices. So, we kind of, there are channels of communication and, Yannick still seem to be quite tight, relatively good mates and stuff. And,
okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, that was a tangent.
Yes. Well, all this just brings us to the release of Virtual 11 on the 21st of March 1998. And here we are.
Yeah.
The artwork, should we discuss that briefly?
Yeah.
As we bring the episode to a close, and then next step we'll get into the tracks.
So it's Melvin Grant again, right?
It is Melvin Grant.
Fear of the Dark artist.
Yeah, he's back. I thought he'd blown his chance, but...
No.
The phone comes ringing.
You know what? I quite like this artwork. If you ignore the footie happening in the background.
Just, the football.
Yeah. But the demonic sort of futuristic Eddie, the big splashes of red colour along the right-hand side. And I can't remember exactly what it is. It looks like sort of souls writhing kind of thing. And then you've got this little kid wearing a virtual headset whilst all this stuff is happening behind him. I think that's quite a cool, of its time album cover. It's certainly a step up from Fear of the Dark and from No Prayer for the Dying and from the X Factor, which did not like at all. It is maybe the best thing about the album.
Okay, I think it's a step
other than Future Real.
It's a step up from the X Factor. I just think conceptually it's kind of a mess. Like the virtual headset, the Eddie, the football, none of these things go together. Like Melvin Grant himself said when he was asked to do it, he said, I was asked to design something related to virtual reality, but was later asked to alter the artwork by adding a football game.
Yeah, so I think the football game is anachronistic, doesn't make any sense.
No.
Was a stupid inclusion from Iron Maiden and presumably
I'd
Steve.
love to see what Melvin Grant's original artwork looked like before he was asked to add the football stuff. That might have been quite good.
Well, I imagine it was just exactly the same, but without the footballers on the grass in the background.
Yeah.
And so then you have this quite cool album cover of a kid with a virtual reality headset and what looks like this demonic Eddie and those sort of writhing souls. It's a very Doom, the video game style cover.
Yeah.
And so, it kind of looks like Doom is happening behind this kid because of the VR headset.
Yeah.
So I think it's quite cool, but the football players just make it really tacky.
Yeah, the football players make it tacky. Like it's like I said, the color palette I like, and it's not a bad Eddie. But again, I just get frustrated because I am a Maiden fan who likes an Eddie to inhabit a distinctive world, and I don't get that here at all. It's just like, here's your quite well executed but really generic Eddie. There's a kid with a VR headset on. Okay, I get that conceptually. And then the football thing is just like, well, that's awful.
One thing I don't get about it, and I've only just spotted this for the first time looking at it now, is there's just, the kid is like sat on a pool of water. So the very bottom seems to be like just a body of water, and he's on a rock in that water, which is a bit odd.
So here we are, Sam. We've arrived at the point of Virtual 11.
Yep.
Next episode, we have the joy of discussing the 8 fine slabs of metal contained within.
It's only 8 songs.
It's only 8
and
songs.
Yet it feels like it lasts 8 years.
Well, if that hasn't excited you enough, you have to tune in to the next episode to see what we really think.
Okay.
About the music herein.
All right. Buckle up. It's going to be a ride.
Follow us at MaidenPod on X.
On X.
Give us your money.
You don't have to give us your money. But if you could just share this podcast, that would be really nice.
Rate, like, subscribe.
Do those things, yes. Give us some visibility in the algorithm.
Please do. And if you do have an original pressing of Virtual 11 on vinyl,
I'd be interested to see that. Yeah.
Yeah. Or don't stress yourselves. Like, don't put yourselves out. But if you want to send a photo to us on the X, I'd look at it.
I would also look at it.
Yeah. That's all you're getting.
All right. Speak to you next time.
Bye.
Bye.